So over the last 4 weeks, we've been looking at trauma and the mind-body connection and your personal narratives and the impact that your narratives, the stories of your life, the themes that you hold on to that have become part of your constructs, part of your I-ness, your ego, the impact that that has had on your health, your wellness, and the way in which you relate to the world. As we go forward, we're getting more and more specific in this journey. Last week, I talked about mysticism. I invited you to explore your relationship to God, to spirituality, just a little bit, and what it means to look at to reinterpret the events in your life and look at a bigger spiritual picture to why things happen as they do without the impulse for spiritual bypass, which is so fraught within the wellness and spirituality communities, an avoidance of the shadow self. When the shadow is part of our wisdom and it's trying to hold a mirror up to the places in which we are disconnected from our true self. And so it's important to go back in time to really the beginning, to find out what is the information that has been imprinted within our body mind via the samskaras, these mental impressions, these deep grooves of information that influence how we see the world, how the world experiences us. They're essentially the emotional, the habits that we get into because of their energetic familiarity. And so we've got to go back and begin to unpack, where are we holding on to attachments to these stories, and what do we need to do in order to begin the process of transcending them. When we get to this point, I mean, I think you all know me enough at this point to know that I straddle two worlds. On one hand, I am deeply connected to spirit and to mysticism and intuition and magic, if you will. But on the other hand, I am deeply, deeply rooted. My foundation is strong. My roots grow deep. I'm very practical in the way in which I operate in my life. I'm pretty balanced that way in terms of my own chakras. But that means that I'm not quick to dismiss my humanity in order to embrace my spirituality. I want to learn from the events in my life, but I don't want to pretend there wasn't pain and suffering. I can't change what happened. I can't change the events that caused me suffering, that caused trauma. Life just is. But I can change my response to it, and I can also cultivate a level of empowerment and strength so that when I do get triggered, I'm able to recognize that I'm time traveling, that I'm in my shadow, that there's internalized energy, that the shadow energy that includes rage or shame or guilt or grief that wants to be acknowledged. And so I might, in the privacy of my own little yoga studio, I might rage, I might scream, I might beat a pillow, I might journal write. I'm going to do everything I can in my power to let the animal energy out and not go too quick to spirituality. So I'm going to write, I'm angry because, I'm scared because. I'm going to write what's called fuck you letters, where I'm going to be pure judgment. I'm going to allow myself to go into the archetype of the judge, of the critic, and I'm going to let loose. Because if I don't, and I internalize that big fuck you that my child is feeling, that my ego is feeling, it's going to find a way to get out that could potentially wreak havoc in my own life, and most certainly continue to create more separation, more otherizing. So for me, the work to get to that place of openness, compassion, transcendence, and empathy means I have to first go into everything that seems like the opposite and give it some breath and space and discharge the energy. And in that process, it's usually go through, in my journal writing, I'm angry because, and then purge it. I'm scared because, purge it. Until I can get to I'm sad because in most cases, that's what's living underneath everything else. That grief that hasn't been acknowledged, that I haven't acknowledged, that need that did not get met, that I need to meet. And so when I say everything happens exactly as it needs to in order for the soul to transform, I don't mean that in a way that is asking you to detach from the animal self. I do believe that. I do believe, like I said, if it happened, it happened, and you can't do anything about it, but you can use it as fodder for spiritual development. So I can now look back at the moments of my life, especially the really traumatic moments. Do I wish they didn't happen? Yeah, of course, absolutely. And they did. So now what am I going to do with it? I want to be empowered, not in spite of it, but because of it. Because within that trauma, it also gave me the opportunities for self-love, for acceptance, for patience, for strength, for boundaries, for compassion. All elements that I need to have for myself so that I can have it for others. And so a huge part of this process is, like, I know that within my own, I know that I'm in this body, as we all are, to really learn the depth and the power and the value of love. Not the squishy, touchy-feely kind of love, but I'm talking about that compassionate love. This is why we are in these bodies, to learn what love is. And part of our humanity is that we will, because we're not just dealing with our own ego, we're dealing with the collective ego, we're also going to have to deal with what love is not. And so if everything happens exactly the way it's supposed to in order for the soul to transform, it's really that last part. We're here for the transformation of our soul, to open our hearts and our consciousness to the power and the depth and the beauty and the poetry of love. And so if everything happens the way it's supposed to, it's because it happened. It's not necessarily because I believe it was divined to happen. Although I do believe in karma, but I don't necessarily think every single moment has been preordained. I do believe that every single moment is an answer to a prayer. I asked for liberation. And what God gave me, what I got very clear, what had to happen in order to liberate, I had to forgive. I wasn't anticipating that. But that was key. That was the answer to the prayer. Spirit was like, you want that? You got to go here. And this is the invitation going forward. And it takes time. Forgiveness, first of all, it's not a one and done. It takes a lifetime. The inability to forgive is a caustic energy that truly impacts no one else except ourselves. And I'm going to get more into that as we get to the fourth chakra, but I do want to plant a seed, because in Mystic Flow on Fridays, it's going to be a part of the practice, is forgiving ourselves for the choices that we have made that may have created hurt or harm for ourselves. We'll start there, and then in time maybe explore the possibility of forgiving others in your life. And so I just wanted to give you like a little bit of an overview, because as we begin to unpack the personal narratives that we have going back, and each narrative will change as you go deeper into the chakras, starting with your family, then your sexuality, and other things, of course, and then building from there. But all of this will unpack certain information that connects us back to some of our traumas, limited beliefs, and constructs. And within that, I'm going to be asking you to look at a bigger spiritual reason to why things happen as they did. And if you are holding on to resentments that's tethering you between another person or an event that might actually be keeping you stuck, and what it would look like to finally cut that cord. But like I said, there are still moments that come up for me that I get triggered based on my own trauma. And if you read my book, you'll know where that trauma was related to. There's certain moments that, especially if I'm tired or hungry or lonely or scared, when I'm a little bit more vulnerable and fragile, if I get triggered, my energetic body time travels to that moment, that 6-year-old little girl. And I'm reactive from that. In the past, that reactivity would have resorted to me using drugs or alcohol or acting out sexually or other behaviors that I was looking for in terms of self-soothing. It may have taken me years, months to get back into balance or homeostasis. Now, if I get triggered, I might go down to my yoga room, pick up a piece of paper and write, I'm angry because, I'm scared because. I might write a fuck you letter. I might beat a pillow, rage, cry. And then I'm going to get on with my day. I'm going to reconnect with my source. I'm going to find that compassion. And I'm not going to allow for that caustic energy to determine the choices I make going forward. It only works if you work it, and the work comes from many things, but in my practice, asana, mantra, mudra, pranayama, meditation, prayer, therapy, sleep, diet, play. These are some of the tools that work for me to bring me back into my center. And that's what I'm inviting you all into as we go forward. Last week, I talked a lot about the chakras. I'm going to invite you to go back into that if you haven't already, just to understand what the chakras are. Vortices of electromagnetic energy that line the length of the spine. They distribute prana through the body. They receive information from the external world. When the trauma gets blocked, and they get blocked because when the chakra gets blocked, they get blocked because of trauma. And they prevent the flow of prana through the body, which causes stagnation, and that can leave that particular part of the body vulnerable to tension, stress, anxiety, which, as we know, impacts the central nervous system, affects the hormonal system, the immune system, and can leave us more vulnerable to illnesses and diseases. And many of the illnesses and diseases, not all, not even close, but some can be attributed to a blockage in the chakra based on emotional suppression, especially anger. And so we're going to explore that week by week. We're going to start with the Muladhara Chakra. And so I'm going to read a little bit from my book about the Muladhara Chakra. And again, if you want more information and you're like busily writing notes, don't bother. I already did it for you. It's all in my book. Everything that you need to know at this point about the teachings that I'm offering here and really throughout the whole of this year. It's kind of sequential in order. Muladhara Chakra. It means root support. Located at the base of your spine or the perineum, the root chakra helps you remain grounded and secure in the physical world. So it's related to home, safety, and stability. And it governs your survival instincts as you navigate your place in society and on the planet. It is what roots us to each other and to the here and now. It exhibits a primal force, teaching you how to be in your body, how to live in relationship and sustain it with the world, your family, and your tribe. Not surprisingly, this is where much of your trauma is initiated, including developmental and ancestral traumas. Trauma is the earthquake that shakes our foundation, ripping the ground right out from under us. Although the magnitude of this internal quake is particularly acute when the abuse or other trauma happens in childhood, when our world revolves around those who are supposed to care for and protect us, all unresolved trauma disrupts this chakra. And sadly, a crack in the foundation makes the entire structure unsound. If the first chakra is blocked, all the rest are too. since our foundation is responsible for supporting the whole being. So you can see how critically important it is to understand that root chakra, which, by the way, one of the reasons you might be feeling so fatigued right now, in lieu of some of the decisions that the Supreme Court is making in relationship to our rights as women and birthing people, as well as what they have just done in terms of gun safety or lack thereof in New York, and even including what just happened today, allowing for prayer in school related to this case up in Washington. This is all first chakra stuff. This all has to relate to our family, home, safety, security. Right now we're being shown that our nation is an unsafe, unstructured, unpredictable place where our family is betraying us again and again and again. And so if you're feeling a sense of fatigue, tightness in your legs, issues in your digestive tract, for example, this could be an indication that you're taking so much energy into that first chakra, it's spinning wildly, or it's just collapsed, connecting us back to our own personal trauma, where we were taught that our world was not safe, was unpredictable, that the rug was going to get pulled out from underneath us. So for many of us, we are time traveling to that point of helplessness, and our physical body is paying the price. And so don't be surprised if all of a sudden you're like, why are my hamstrings so tight? Or that knee is suddenly bothering you again, because there's a disruption in the chakra's ability to move the prana through this part of the body. I hope that makes sense to you. Let me break down the Muladhara Chakra a little bit more. Like I said, it's the foundation of our very beingness, and it's what keeps us in relationship to the physical primal world. And very importantly, it provides the life lessons, okay? This is key, because we want to empower ourselves. We want to open ourselves to whatever it is that our spiritual purpose and maturation is taking us to, and it relies on life lessons. That's what's going to help us grow and mature. So it provides the life lessons that teach us about our relationship with the earth, the relationship that we have with our family, our literal family, as well as our global community. The Muladhara Chakra is the foundation of our mental, emotional, and physical health, and it connects us to our five senses, all right? The foundation of our emotional, mental, and physical health is dependent upon a balanced and stabilized root chakra. This particular energy center reveals any of our issues that are related to connection, family, health, home, survival, commitment, as well as our ability to stand up for ourselves. Our fight or flight response is initiated from this chakra. It's the center of our stability. So when we're out of balance, which, unless you're completely shut down right now, well, you might be shut down as a response to what's going on, or if you're just like completely in avoidance with everything that's happening in the world, I think it's fair to say that we're all out of balance right now. As a result, you can feel anxious, ungrounded, disconnected, as if the earth beneath you is unsteady. This unsteadiness can have an effect on us on a personal level. Again, this could influence just our ability to stay centered, to show up in our conversations and conflict. It can also most certainly affect you professionally. Same thing, not being able, being impulsive in your reactivity. What else I want to say? I guess the reason it can impact you both personally and professionally is because when your sense of safety, of comfort and belonging are in any way compromised, it's also going to fracture the connection that you have with your true self, which then is going to stir up the ego and impact our interpersonal relationships. When that chakra is balanced, we feel seen and safe. We feel supported and held. We have the ability to bond, to be still. We can have a sense of trust in our world, a feeling of safety, security, stability, strong roots, comfortable in our skin. We can be curious and open, present, connected, have a really strong sense of family and tribal identity. The traumas that can block this chakra, rendering its vibrational quality either excessive or deficient. Excessive meaning it moves too fast, deficient, move too slow. But the traumas, and obviously there's so many that relate to that first chakra, but I'll name a few just so you have kind of a sense and it can help you reflect back to your own traumas. But really, like I read in the book, everything begins at that root chakra. Everything. And so that's where we start. It's in the same way when I'm teaching a pose and I say, what do I say? If the foundation of your pose is in any way imbalanced or erratic, it's going to impact the whole rest of the pose. So there's no point in, if you're in triangle pose, in opening the shoulders or making an adjustment on the shoulders or the neck. You got to first ground the feet. You got to make sure they're stable. Everything builds from that. And it's the same with the first chakra. So the traumas or the challenges include birth trauma, physical neglect or abuse, major surgery or illness, abandonment, incarceration, ableism, rejection, lack of nourishment, being in threatening environments, witnessing violence, homelessness are just some examples. It also includes inherited trauma, and that means family members, and go way, way back. Family members who were survivors of genocide or colonization, enslaved people or enslavers, war veterans, families who have a background of domestic violence, gang violence, racism, segregation, forced immigration, displacement, poverty. And so you really want to think about your own traumas, your own background, like unpack it. Where do you come from? What established your roots? How has that affected you? I come from both a Jewish and a Catholic background. My family is all from Poland. Immigrants, that came in to escape the war. Many stayed and died. So there's Holocaust in the family, there's death, displacement. My mother was also the product of artificial insemination back in 1945. We only found this out a few years back. She has 23 brothers and sisters who are all from the same donor father. With this information, which is fascinating, it's a whole story I'm not going to get into, but it's fascinating because it also relates to repopulating the Jewish community after the war. And it was a very intentional thing that was being done, but it's also very secretive. A lot of shame based around it. So when I talk about this with my mom, so much of her own trauma now makes perfect sense to her based on her particular narrative. And so this is what I'm going to invite you into this week. Like, for example, I'm going to ask you to explore what is the relationship that you have with your own family. Is there information that can help you to heal and grow? Is there something you need to write about, talk about, unpack a little bit about the dynamics within your family that you haven't been willing to go towards, or maybe you've been going towards for years, but this is a continued opportunity to see now like how it might be relating to your health and your wellness. Can you see the ways that your unresolved relationships or trauma have actually informed your decision making? All right, again, this is a question. You can go back and rewind it and write it down later if you want. How has these unresolved traumas or these relationships impacted your relationships today, either with them or your partnerships, your friendships, even your connection to the planet? It's important to know that this process of deep healing always begins with your awareness, because you cannot change what you won't see. So you want to find out what are the stories related to the first chakra that you have embodied, and are you willing to create a new healing story? If the chakra is deficient, you can experience feelings of lethargy, insomnia, depression. You can feel feelings of restlessness, anxiety, of being disconnected, isolated, all right? If it's excessive, you might experience yourself feeling like addicted to security, afraid of change, where your boundaries just feel really rigid, hoarding, material fixation, feelings of greed, of selfishness. You might be checking off the list right now, like both. You're like both deficient and excessive, like check, check, check. And it's just the flip side of the same coin. And so depending on the trigger, you might go from one to another, or you might exhibit more in one classification than the other. Doesn't matter. It's just that if you are experiencing some of these feelings, you might be able to say like, I'm anxious. I think my first chakra is blocked. What does the first chakra represent? I wonder if there's anything going on in my life or environment that might be impacting my chakra. What do I need to do to move this energy through? Now, I'm going to mention the physical challenges that can occur or inform that there's a blocked chakra. Use this just as information. Try not to get into a headspace of, again, magical thinking or this idea that, because you've got digestion issues, that is only because there's a block in the chakra. There might be so many. Remember, I straddle both the mystical world and the practical world. I believe in that saying of trust basically it's trust God, but tie your camel to the post. It's actually trust Allah, I think is the original. Trust Allah, but tie your camel to the post. And I'm from that school of thought, that you might have something else that's going on that simultaneously needs to be addressed by a doctor. And so you don't want to just dismiss it, that it's an emotional blockage or that it's an answer to a prayer. It might also be Crohn's. And simultaneously, it might give you an opportunity to say like, oh, I wonder if I can use this as a launching pad to see if there is indeed some information related to this imbalance that might give me some freedom, some liberation. So in that first chakra, digestive issues, including any disorders of the bowels, the intestines, chronic lower back pain, sciatica, disordered eating, depression, obsessive compulsive disorder, alcoholism, immune-related disorders, issues with your teeth, your bones, your blood, fatigue. And so, again, just get curious, but be, cautious not to not to take care of yourself and just assign it an emotional disruption. But anytime I have something going on, like I've mentioned many times since I've started this program, I have this thing in my my right hip that has really been bothering me. It keeps getting progressively worse. And like even sitting cross-legged position, I find myself fidgeting in a way that I never used to fidget. Now there's so many very practical, logical reasons why this right hip would be bothering me, especially after years and years in my past, especially a very intense, very disciplined practice. My discipline, my tapas, leans towards my shadow because it's such a part of my identity, and it relates to how I got my approval, how I learned love, and it also has a lot to do with my dissociation, because within my discipline, it gives me something so intensely to focus on that it airs me towards dissociation. So I have to be very careful about my discipline. And in my practice, especially when I was younger, my discipline and also the fact that I have a very high tolerance to pain because of dissociation, I know that there's a physical reason why at 55 my right hip might be hurting me. And the right hip also, it's not just in the hip, it's at the very top of the femur where the greater trochanter goes straight into the hip joint and the muscles that are surrounding it. So it's related to both the first and the second chakra. It's on the right hand side. In energetic anatomy, you're looking at it more symbolically. This represents the masculine archetype of action, determination. There's other things that because of the pandemic, that because of now Roe v. Wade, I'm not surprised that it's not more and more inflamed. This right side is my activator, it's my caretaker, it's I'm the one that you call at 3 o'clock in the morning if something is going wrong. It's my impulse to want to take care of people, to do what needs to be done in a very determined way. I tend to internalize my emotions. I tend not to ask for help, ask for support. I'm just hyper dependable when it comes to my friendships, my family, all of that. So this is giving me something to look at. Do I need to be asking for help? Do I need more support? Am I needing more space for grief, for tears, for the left side, for that vulnerability? Am I feeling the weight of the world on my own foundation? Now, is it true or not? It ultimately doesn't matter. What's important is that I unpack it and get curious and see like, oh, what would happen if I asked for the help that I need, which by the way, I do. Because this symbolically gives me a place to say, what else is going on? And can I look at that? And if I'm activated at all, maybe there's some truth in it. And maybe then I can see what happens. Now, it's not going to necessarily take the pain away in my hip, but it might change my life. It might alter my perspective. It might get my needs met. And that's what I'm going to ask you to do this week is if you find that there's something in your body that you're curious about, use it as a way to deepen your own investigation. Okay, I think I've said quite a bit. Rumi says something, and I apologize if I don't say this correctly. Maybe you are searching in the branches for what appears in the roots. Maybe you are searching in the branches for what appears in the roots. I like this on a whole lot of levels. Always looking outside of ourselves for the validation, the support, all the things that we need, rather than recognizing that when we establish our own deep roots, our own foundation, everything that we need is from deep within. And this is the work that we're doing to unravel the stories, to cut those cords, to forgive when possible ourselves and each other, and connect, or rather disengage from the power of our false identification, the ego, and instead connect to our true self. So this week we're going to be using asana, mantra, and mudra, meditation and pranayama as a way to ignite the energy, to stimulate the Ida and Pingala nadis, the Sushumna nadi, to help to discharge the energy specifically in the legs. So we'll be doing a lot of quad and hamstring work in our yoga practice. I'll be asking you questions for reflections in the different classes. First, how it relates to yourself on the mat, and then how it relates out into the world. And I'll also be introducing the mantra and the mudra that goes with it. So for the last few moments that we have, each chakra has a seed mantra that is associated. And they're small little words, if you will. The first chakra is Lam, and it's Lam, Vam, Ram, Yam, Hum, and then Om. Lam, Vam, Ram, Yam, Hum, Om, and then the top is silent. There are some that do the Ajna chakra as, is it Shrem? And then the top is Om. I prefer silence at the top. So the first one is Lam. And the mudra that we do for this is Gyan, where you rest your palms onto your knees. The thumb and the index finger come together and touch. The other fingers extend. The arms are straight. The hands rest on the knees. So sit up tall and close your eyes. And just bring your awareness down to the Muladhara Chakra. Each chakra has a color that is associated with it, as well as an element that symbolically allows you to understand more about the resonance of this chakra. It also has a shadow, as well as an affirmation, if you will. The color is red. The element is earth. The shadow is fear. And the affirmation is I am. I am. This chakra affects the legs, the lower part of the intestinal tract, the spinal column, your teeth, the bones, the blood. So it also, of course, affects the ankles, the feet, the knees, and portions within the hip. Notice any sensation that you feel. So track this lower part of your body for a moment. Take into consideration with everything that I've said. Is there information here within that first chakra that might be helpful to you in order to be able to transcend some of the resentments or unresolved grief that you're carrying, that can allow spaciousness for energy to flow and a deeper connection to source? Have you felt as if there is a fracture in your own foundation? Do you feel a sense of safety and security, stability within this world? Do you have a sense of trust in the world? Or do you feel anxious, disconnected, fearful? Have you been experiencing this world through a lens of lack? Have you been experiencing depression or fatigue? So we're going to chant 3 times Lam, and like Om, we'll drag it out so it's a full exhale. So take a deep breath in. They say with seed mantras, the bija, which is the seed sound, that inside the seed, the entire tree is hiding. And so 3 times we'll chant Om Lam Namaha. Om Lam Namaha. Om Lam Namaha. Om Lam Namaha. And then with your eyes closed, your spine long, let's just take a moment here, knowing that these seed mantras have an effect on the vagus nerve. It helps to balance the central nervous system, balancing the left and the right hemispheres of the brain. There's a physiological response. So not only are we calling in the power and the presence of spirit, but we're also beginning the process of activating these energy channels that connect the physical body with cosmic consciousness. Bring your awareness to the third eye center. Keep your eyes closed, but turn your eyeball straight up to that center point. And as you ground down, elongate the spine and pull the energy from the Muladhara Chakra straight upward, moving it right into the crown chakra, and allow the crown chakra to expand. releasing some of the energy, maybe all of it in this moment. Just feeling a little bit more spaciousness. And then place your palms into Anjali Mudra, into prayer. And take a very deep breath in. Exhale it out through the mouth. And then we close this practice by setting our intention for this week. We call him the God of our own understanding, and we ask to remain curious in this investigation. The willingness to look back in time at the relationships that we had with our family, with our community, with our education, with our religion, with all the earliest influences and the impact that their teaching, that their modeling had on our own feelings of safety and security. We recognize we are who we are because of who they were and are, and the path that they walked, and the teachings that they received, and the traumas that they experienced. So we ask for the ability to unpack all this information so that we can uncover and discover our true self and let go of the karma that we're carrying, of the issues that we're harboring, of the attachments that we've had to the limiting beliefs, so that we can transcend, move forward, and heal, and open our hearts to love. And then together we offer this intention with one single Om. Take a deep breath in. Om. Lower your chin to your chest. Open your eyes. And inhale, come up. Thank you so much for class. Namaste.